Welcome to the Wise Power Retreat, where I'm having a series of intimate conversations with people about their menopause experience and what it's revealing and liberating in them. This series of conversation is about the power, authority, and purpose that menopause awakens in us, about what's possible individually and collectively when this rite of passage is supported and dignified. And today I am delighted to be speaking with Prune Harris. And I regard Prune as one of the world experts in understanding energy. So since birth, Prune's been able to see energy, the energy of humans, animals, trees, and the earth. And she teaches and empowers thousands of people across the globe, myself included, to bring consciousness to our energy systems and how we can make small, because they are small often, aren't they? Small yet powerful changes that elicit real change in our lives. And Prune does this through her in-person work and online courses, her social media presence, her membership platform, and your YouTube channel, and your wonderful book, Prune, of which I can see a copy of it there in the background. But your book, and it's called Your Radiant Soul, Understand Your Energy to Transform Your World. And folks, get the book. I'm going to do a promo now. It is just so beautifully designed. The energy of the book is gorgeous, and it is just a joy to read. It's just, you write so clearly and simply, and it's so obvious, and it's so accessible, and it's so useful. So fantastic book.
Wow, Alexandra. Well, thank you for all of those beautiful, beautiful words. And thank you for noticing the energy of the book as well. It was crafted with very much that intent. And so many people feel it, even when they see the cover. So thank you for noticing that. That's really beautiful for my heart.
It was immediate, Prune. Yes, and I'm not surprised people were noticing it. And I imagined you'd actually really tended to that. Yeah, that was very deliberate, what you did. Well, Prune, we are here to have a conversation about menopause. And what we're going to do is go into your experience of it and then see where that leads us in understanding about bringing more light, really, to this extraordinary transformation that we go through at menopause. And so that's what we're doing with these individual conversations. So I'm going to ask you first, where are you in your menopause journey?
I'm in a really, really rich, luscious, and beautiful place within it. So here at the beginning of 2025, I have not bled for about 3 years. And I was so grateful for circumstances that helped me really honor that last bleed. For much of my life, I've always honored and loved the bleed time. I love the lusciousness of it, the thickness of my energy at that time. I would often offer that blood to the land. I was always deeply aware of the vitality and life force that exists within our blood, in that big gifting of that cycle within my body system was something that I was always in deep connection with. But, as we get into menopause and there's bleed times here and then not, and then there is, and then there's not, I was always aware that I might not know the last time that I was going to bleed. And so I was very conscious of that. But as I remember so clearly, even now as we're talking, I can completely go back to being in my bedroom those three and a bit years ago, and loving, honoring, feeling such reverence for that blood. And that was the last time I'll ever see it. So that feels really, really precious to me, to have had that process of really witnessing that rite of passage, as you say, really witnessing that there is a significant change that has been coming and will continue coming, but a very big threshold had been crossed at that moment. So as far as kind of how I am in myself right now, I'm aware of some cycles. Of course, for me, everything is translated through that lens of energy because that's my natural language. And I'm aware that there are big cycles that play in my body system. I'd say right now they're between 3.5 and 4 months. That these times of like, I feel that sort of surging more of that hormonal energy in my system. And during that time, I may have some more hot flushes than when that surging, as I would call it, isn't in my system. So there's still a cycle that's moving through my body, through my year, but it's a much, much slower one. And it has been slowing as well over these years. At first, even though I wasn't bleeding, there was still that feeling of like, oh, my body is in some kind of monthly cycle. And then I witnessed it go more to kind of 6 weeks, 7 weeks. And now it's more in that 3.5, 4 month stage. So that's really interesting to witness that in myself.
It really is, actually. I've never heard someone articulate it so clearly. It's like you're getting an echo of that monthly rhythm with the menstrual cycle. And I almost have a sense now, as time passes, that the echo will get sort of more and more subtle and quieter, and then it will.
Yeah.
I know that's my, imagining. But yes, so you are in a kind of echo of that, and it's extending more and more. How interesting. And I'd love to hear. Oh, I'm just really with that image now of the echo and you inside that, actually.
Yeah, well, Alexandra, let me maybe just talk a little bit more about that because I think it is we've learned within our kind of mainstream medical or patriarchal worldview of menopause, we've taken in those deep subconscious understandings, one, that it's horrible, two, that we're pretty much useless afterwards. We've lost our valuableness or our worth. It's black and white. You are menstruating, you have your menopause, and then there's this space afterwards. And I think what I've observed in both working with women at all stages of that journey, but also now, of course, having the personal learning in myself, is that we live within cycles, don't we? The 24-hour cycle of the sun, the 28 and 29-day cycle of the moon, the great cycles of the planets, the cycles of the seasons. So we are absolutely hardwired, soft wired, every wired for understanding cycles. They're so deep in us, we never even have to think of them. When we do think of them, wow, it gets even more juicy, but we don't even have to think of them. So it makes sense to me that as my monthly menstruation cycle has changed, then my body's finding ways to move that transition through, still cyclical
Yeah.
fashion, but it's changing, it's moving. And I love it. I love those times when I feel energetically, when I see a woman who is ovulating or menstruating, their energies are quite similar and they are thick, thick, juicy, amazing. It's an incredible electrical field. And we feel it, don't we? How many times I remember for me, it was so frequently, mostly when I was ovulating rather than menstruating, but maybe I go to open a car door and a great big spark would fly off. Have you ever experienced that?
I have this.
Yeah, those times when electrically we're much thicker, we're far more conductive. And of course, that also makes us far more psychic, far more connected into our intuition. We can really access the richness, the throbbingness, the thrummingness of our own emotional states when we're in that denser energetic fields that those reproductive hormones bring in, which is why sometimes our moods can alter so much. So when I feel that thickness in my system now, and actually it was about a week ago, 10 days ago, when I had, for the first time in 3 and a bit months, I had that thickness in my system. And I just celebrated it so much. Yes, it meant I had a few more hot flushes, but being someone who's been cold all my life, I love the hot flushes. I totally love that feeling of like, here it is, but also energetically, I can work with it in a way that makes sure it's not too intense. Yeah, it's the intensity that really can drain us or move us towards panic, can't it? So they don't have to be intense in my system, because I can understand just how to invite them to move out rather than to move up in that huge flush. So being able to really witness that in my system last week, the week before, it delights me. I think of that big energy of creativity that's still coming in those cyclical patterns in my system.
I really want to stay with this theme of cyclicity, because just to deepen into it, actually, because as you say, we are embedded. Well, my word is embedded, but I think this is embedded in all sorts of cycles. And I always think of the menstrual cycle as giving us, because it's inside our body in such a sort of obvious way. I mean, obviously, we have the circadian rhythm and other more subtle rhythms in our body, but the menstrual cycle is so, consuming it. I always think of it as tutoring us in cyclical consciousness, really grounding us in the imperative of caring for cyclical consciousness, because when you don't, there's trouble with your menstrual cycle where you fight it. And I always like to say that at menopause, we graduate. We don't need that tutoring anymore now, because we've been so well tutored in it, and there's a sort of implicit understanding and connection with it, which gives us an acuity for sensing all sorts of other cycles going on. I do think of the menstrual cycle journey as a journey of attunement, all sorts of levels, to ourselves, to the world, natural world, to subtle worlds, to our soul, and so on. And we've graduated, and now we have a sort of acuity or an attunement to all the subtle cycles at work in our being. And just one of the ones I'm tracking is actually the creative cycle of my calling. I can feel myself held by that now, because the menstrual cycle used to hold me, and I can feel that holding, along with, of course, all the other cycles that you just named. That's another.
Yeah, I love that concept, and I would absolutely agree. Thinking of that place of, if we put it into the concept of the maiden, the mother, the crone, or the place of beginning, initiation, that place of maturity, and then the place of the wisdom keeper, the wisdom action, and or the wisdom inspirer even. I love that concept of that cycle of the soul calling as we deepen into a completion and a stepping forward into the next place. I'm going to think about that moving from this conversation.
The next question I would love to ask you, which we're probably feeling into already, is what has menopause given you? What I want to say, what powers or capacities you have now that you relish?
There's a word that really comes to mind there, Alexandra, which is magnificence.
Ooh.
I think as our power, our energy, as we move through that great doorway, it's a big doorway, the menopause doorway, isn't it? It's a big threshold.
Massive.
As we move through it, there's the capacity for an immense reclaiming, a reclaiming of ways of being that in our mature years we were growing into, exactly like you say, those cycles, those places of understanding more of our deep worth as a human being, outside any concepts of gender or status or any other limiting concepts, but that place of us as human beings, as a life force that's part of that great web of life. It feels like the depth of our wisdom, when it's not being moved in that cyclical nature, it means that that life force, that creativity within me, within us, has different expression. And for me, I think that word magnificence really holds the bigness of potential expression that I know I didn't have even 10 years ago.
Mm,
Um, I
mm,
certainly didn't have 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And was I a magnificent person? Yes, of course I was, just like every single one of us are. But there is a deep freedom having moved through that threshold. And I think that magnificence, or even the word sovereignty, that capacity to say, this is who I am. It feels like, as you're saying, that cyclical nature, that attunement, that deep learning, it evolves in a whole different place of freedom during the process of menopause and beyond. So, yeah, I think those are probably that magnificence and freedom would be two of the big gifts that I perceive that the menopause is
mm.
bringing me, as well as, and this is something I see regularly, as well as kind of a feeling of like, I don't give a damn. I want to do it my way. I want to step into it in the way that my soul and my spirit calls me. And all of those, all of the potential limitations of should or must or need suddenly has a different framework of thinking around it. And I think some of that, Alexandra, for me, certainly, I've really, I'm very comfortable with death. I've worked with death a lot, big beloveds of mine. I was born one of twins, and my twin died at birth. So death is a very familiar companion.
Yeah.
But as I've gone through menopause, I am deeply aware of my upcoming death.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that is inspiring. And maybe that death is tomorrow. And maybe that death is in 35 years' time. I'm 52. I have no idea and I don't need to know. But it's coming. And that gives me immense freedom and immense a commitment to myself and what I want to do or be in this world. And I think that's the huge gift of menopause as well.
Wow. What a clock. The things you've been saying there. This word magnificence, it's so powerful, that word. It's
Mm.
got this glow about it. Yes. And this claiming of something that I feel as you're speaking. Really a recognition of yourself and the claiming of that.
Mm.
And you use this phrase, commitment to myself. And you speak about death. Yes, I feel very strongly that menopause is such a classic moment of recognizing, oh my God, death suddenly appears on the horizon for real. It's up until that point, it's not there. It's like in
Mm.
denial or something. But going through menopause, suddenly, yes, it shows up. And there's this sense of, I was going to say urgency actually, but it's, I think initially when it shows up, it really actually requires something it demands something. Because I think menopause itself demands something of us to be able to claim that
Mm-hmm.
magnificence. And I can't help feeling the recognition of our mortality is what actually really activates something in us.
Mm.
And we in menopause, we're really asked to meet that. And that's the sort of workout that we have to go through to be able to. It's quite a strong word I want to use, and I'd be interested to see how you hear it, but to earn that magnificence. Because in some level, of course, we don't have to earn it, it's always there. We are magnificent. And at
Mm.
menopause, we get to realize it. But I guess when I'm using that word, it is that we have to go through some kind of emotional initiatory process to be able to claim that word.
Yeah, I really hear that. Because we're going through a death, aren't we? As
Yes,
we
yeah.
go through menopause, we are going through a death. And that death is not only of that cycle of the creativity of our blood, but often it's a death of identity.
Mm.
And as we move through that death of identity, we're asked to be in relationship, an emergent relationship with a new identity. And that is an amazing time.
Mm.
But exactly like you say, we have to actually choose to step into that place. It's a choice.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's what your work and Sjani's work does so incredibly, is empower people to recognize that right there at that time, no matter what has been our cultural norms or our physical norms, right there at that time, wow, we have a choice. And for me, I do agree with that word urgency in the most relaxed and gentle way, if it can be held like that. Because when we are working with tenderness, with that place of our own mortality, when we're working in that threshold place, then we do feel like, goodness, if I only have a few years or decades left,
Yeah.
what do I want to do when I grow up?
Exactly.
Suddenly there's a whole different question.
Yeah. I mean, my immediate thought is, as I'm listening to you speak, is I don't want to waste another second of my life. And it's that feeling. I'm going to swear here now. It's like I'm fucking not holding myself back anymore. If I have been, because when I remember when I went through menopause, I saw all the ways that I had subtly compromised myself, capitulated. Well, for what, it's a very clunky word, this, but to patriarchy, it's very clunky. But at such subtle levels, I saw how I had compromised. And it's like menopause throws the gauntlet down to you and says, are you going to continue doing that? Because you haven't got that much longer left. What are you going to do?
Yeah,
Great.
I really hear that. And it feels like in that choice point, really we have three choices.
Mm,
One is we run away from it.
yes.
We completely escape and deny the potential of our own empowerment in that situation. The other is that we feel utterly stuck in it.
Mm.
Yeah. And I think each of us are all three of these in varying ways. We get utterly stuck in it. But the other one is that we dive deep into it. I like to think that in the heart of every one of us, there is, or in the core of every one of us, there is the soothsayer, the truth teller of our life, our story, our experience. And it feels like, wow, being in the menopause gives you a chance to really meet that inner soothsayer so that your truths can come out into, well, at first from the core into your consciousness, but then from that place into your relationships, into all aspects of your life, and from there into the world. And when that starts happening, wow, we're empowering not just younger women approaching menopause, but we're empowering everything from that place of empowering ourselves. So, yeah, juicy, magnificent.
Juicy magnificence. I just really want to paste those three things you named, because actually you're absolutely right, they all come up, and I almost want to say they're archetypal. Actually, you're going to encounter each of those, and it's part of your initiation. You have to meet. The running away bit is really classic at the beginning of menopause, actually. And I say it's entirely normal. You go utterly go into denial. This is not happening. I'm not going there. And it's like you have to tick that box almost, just archetypal. And then comes a woof, where you're really, there's this feeling of being slugged. It feels like death. It actually just feels like, yeah, this is over. It's over. It's over. My meaningful life is over. And then that third one of choosing to meet it as this awakening to something. And I think actually I'm suddenly feeling tears come up in me, Prune, because I think because we don't understand what's trying to happen at menopause, what menopause is actually trying to gift us, and we're therefore not supported. It's not named, and we're not supported. The reason I'm feeling really moved right now is that some of us can get lost along the way and don't make it to that third place, that come out of menopause sort of limping and sort of giving in to a kind of cultural number that's oppressing us with menopause. And I find that distressing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you bring up this thing, Prune, about if we can meet that challenge, something extraordinary is freed up in us. I mean, it's power. It's power.
Yeah.
It's this extraordinary new energy. It's a different energy. It's power. And the earning bit is important because we've got to take responsibility for that power, because we can still abuse power very nicely, thank you very much, if we're not careful post-menopause. But I do feel that the kind of process of going through menopause really prepares you to be able to take responsibility for it. And the point you were making was that we have within us post-menopause this energy to really contribute something. These are my words of what I've heard you say. We have something that's needed actually in the world.
Yeah. Deeply needed. I mean, every part of our life is deeply needed if we claim it at that level, isn't it?
Yes.
And also just by our life, just by being alive, we're deeply needed. We don't have to do, we don't have to claim, we don't have to step into empowerment to be utterly essential in that web of life. But when, for me, one of the kind of journeys of our lifetime is being able to become more and more an active co-creator of our
Yes.
life. And
Yeah.
if we're a co-creator of our life, we're a co-creator of our world. And if we're a co-creator of our world, we're a co-creator of the world. So it feels like as we move through our big life cycles, menopause being definitely one of them, then we get to choose to claim that further. And I so hear what you say about support. We even think of those three archetypal places of avoidance, stagnation or stuckness, overwhelm, and the claiming. When we think about those, no one chooses to avoid or get stuck. No
Mm-mm.
one chooses that.
Mm-mm.
That's because we're not being empowered to make other choices.
Yes, that's so important. We're not being supported.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're so right. You're so right. We're not choosing to avoid, we're not choosing to get stuck. We are in the dark because we haven't been given the lights to guide us along the runway, so to speak, of
Absolutely.
we're sitting in the dark. And yeah, that's
Yes.
brilliantly put, actually, Prune. Thank you for that.
Well, I hear this word a lot in healing circles of self sabotage. And quite frankly, I think it's a ridiculous word. There you go. You get a little bit of my menopause reclaiming there. Because self sabotage suggests that we choose to sabotage ourselves. And I've never met a single human being, certainly no animal, who would choose that. We do that because we feel like we don't have other choices. And so that becomes what we lean towards, a default pattern. So just really popping that into the place. And that again is where, for me, energy understandings are so empowering, because as I've gone through my menopause and helped thousands of women go through theirs, I'm able to understand, today, let's say, probably hasn't happened for a month or so, but sometime back in December, I woke up and I felt utterly flat, which will be a very familiar feeling to anyone going through menopause. That, like, oh, blimey, someone turned the switch off me. Okay. And that's not my normal way. I think you can have a sense that normally I have quite a lot of life force, a flatness. So immediately I'm able to check in. Oh, am I working with something emotional really big? Have I had a really challenging time with a beloved or something? No. All right. Then it's hormones. So I know exactly what I'm working with. And I have the understandings to say, right, well, if I'm sort of flatlining right now, then I know that my liver energy, which is so responsible for moving so much through my body system, isn't doing its job. Because if it was doing its job, I'd have the sparkiness in me somewhere. So then I know, great, well, I'm going to do some liver practices. I'm going to give my liver meridian a little bit of a, hey, let's wake up, let's do a little bit more. I'm going to do a glorious crown deep spin to kind of say to many parts of my system, we need to start getting those things firing again. And I'm going to do that before I even get out of bed. Then I'm going to turn to my husband and say, I'd really love a cup of tea because I'm working with some hormonal thickness today. So suddenly I have choices. I can get up and think, well, how am I doing? Knowing I'm empowered to bring the changes in that normally in a short amount of time, when I wake up and I'm utterly hormonally thick like that, within 20 minutes, I've got something firing in my system with very little effort. Maybe within an hour, I'm back. Now, underneath it, I know the hormones are moving in thickness. So I'm going to respect that. I'm going to adjust my day because of that when I can. And usually I can. In the evening, I'm going to do a little bit more energy work just to say, come on, I don't want to wake up in the morning feeling like that again. So these places of empowering ourselves with true choices, informing ourselves so that we have true choices. That's definitely a big part of that stepping through the threshold for me.
It's fabulous hearing that. You'll be amused to know I did a liver thing following you, one of your this morning, because I had a shitty night's sleep and I thought, liver, I can feel, yeah. And I was doing it this morning.
That's fabulous.
Yeah, those energy practices are so good for supporting this process, along with I'm just thinking of things like, well, if it was me, it's my diet, what foods I might choose that day. I can feel, for instance, when I'm all sort of spleeny and stuck, and I know particular foods I like need to eat to support that. I mean, that energy work is just so amazing in what it can do within a very short period of time to support ourselves. Yeah. I want to just go back to this power conversation we were having and contribution to the world, because you made such a good point, and I want to expand on it. I had spoken about how post-menopause, we've got powers that are really needed in the world to control the world, and you really emphasized, yes, of course, we're needed all along, just our existence. I just think that's so important that you emphasize that just our very existence is contribution, is meaningful in the world. We are needed. And each stage of our life journey, we bring different kinds of things to the world. And I think what's really important around this restoring menopause is, of course, to do with restoring the powers that we hold post-menopause, because basically we have worth and meaning and contribution up until menopause, and then we fall off a cliff. Yeah. And actually, to be honest, I was only just getting going by then. And it's actually post-menopause that the big game has really begun, because of the inner work that menopause demands. There's a real growing up process that happens that helps to liberate us into that magnificence. And I want to just circle back to it again, because I feel so strongly about it. And it's such a strong theme that I know you hold. We haven't actually said it like this, but I'm going to say it now. And this is something that you said that's sort of implicit in all that you do now. It's like a deep thing. This is what I understood, a deep thing that you are serving in the world, which is ending the legacy of separation. And that's been something that you've been tending to all your life with your energy work. And I would have to say that is absolutely what I have been tending to through all our menstruality work, is restoring connection. And I think post-menopause, that is where that work really takes center stage. I think that's the powers that we hold post-menopause. Be really interested to hear how you hear what I'm saying here. But the powers we hold post-menopause, if I speak for myself, I feel are utterly in service of this restoration of belonging to life, to the world, to nature. Yeah.
Yeah, really, really beautiful, really beautiful. And I completely agree. And it's interesting, isn't it? It's interesting, Alexandra, that it takes those levels of initiation, those thresholds, those rites of passage before we really understand the deeper vibrations of that calling or purpose or capacity within the world. I found that when I use words like soul purpose or life purpose or soul calling, people get panicked and they feel like, oh, I'm not, like, I don't know mine yet. Well, mostly we do. Mostly we do. And
Mostly we do.
yeah. And if we take away the kind of trappings of could you write an essay on what your soul calling was and actually say in one sentence, what is it? I think many of us would say something like, we want to live our fullest in being part of the healing story of the world or part of the great interconnection between the individual self or the individual soul and the world soul or the cosmic, however big we want to go. Like
Yes.
to
Yes.
really understand our essential place of belonging and to radiate that sense into our living experience. In lots of ways, it's very simple, isn't it? We want to experience joy. We want to experience love. We want to feel compassion towards us and experience compassion. We want to enjoy life. And we don't need big houses or big cars or a big bank account to do that. In fact, a lot of the happiness studies have shown us that those things rarely impact happiness in any way. The happiness is what we have is that inner relationship to our sense of self and our sense of why we're here in this world. And there's been, well, I think right now we're in a real crisis around that, aren't we? And
We are.
we are
We are.
we are deeply seeking that connection to support each other in our individual lives so that we can feel that grounding beneath our feet. And from that grounding, really inspire the heart to radiate out more. So it's that place of like, for me, when I'm thinking of menopause, it's that we have gone through vibrational change. And
Yeah.
that vibrational change. So you think about being a little girl and you kind of got whatever it is you've got, whatever your specific constitutional makeup is. And then you move into puberty. And puberty changes that vibration. We become attuned to a slightly different, definitely a very different rhythm, but a slightly different way of being. And then we grow, learn, expand, move through that. We nurture our little ones, whether they are physical children, whether they're projects, whether they're dreams, and we grow them and we grow them and we tend and we grow. And then we get to this incredible time of death and rebirth. And it's not a brand new rebirth. We're not coming out of the egg. We're actually just learning through that vibrational change how to vibrate in an even more, I'm going to use the word clear way. We're no longer vibrationally going in this short cycle. Now we're moving in far bigger waves. Let's think of ourselves as an energetic beacon sending out waves.
Yes.
And the process of menopause deeply changes that. So they're thicker, they're cleaner, they're more committed. That impacts everything, us, our choices, our actions, and the world. So that's the purpose of initiation or thresholds, isn't it? That we go through a vibrational change and therefore a consciousness change.
Yes, exactly. And the word I'm actually holding as I listen to you is coming into greater and greater coherence within ourselves that allows our expression to be bigger, to be clearer. Yeah, that's really how I remember how I experienced just this utter recognition. This is what I'm about. And then how that clarity then just released what it is I was here to do and serve. It was there, it was obvious. It
Yeah.
started just pouring out. Yes, I love the way you describe it, Prune.
Well, in so many ways, when we think about that moving beyond separation, moving beyond that legacy, it's a damaging story, isn't it? And it's one that is at the heart of so many of our modern cultures and therefore our psyches. So consciously thinking about the story of connection. And that starts here, doesn't it? That starts here. I can't be any kind of force for connectivity in the world if I'm actually deeply separated in myself.
Mm.
And so another big gift of the menopause is that there's so much moving, there's so much thickness, there's so much to either try and run away from or get stuck in or dive into, that we're beginning to weave parts of ourselves together that we haven't had to, most of us haven't had to in those other periods of our life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's very well put. You can't avoid yourself
Mhm.
anymore. And I love this image of weaving. We describe in our work an initiatory process. There's sort of 5 stages to that initiatory process. And it's almost like you go through it over and over again, deepening and deepening. It's like spiraling down more and
Mm.
more until you hit pay dirt, which is the ultimate moment of, am I really going to claim myself or not? You know, this is it. There's that sort of do or die. Sorry, it's melodramatic what I'm saying, but it is that strong where you have to go, I'm claiming myself.
Is melodramatic, or very dramatic rather, but we also get choice. We always get choice. Do we want to step into that place of reclaiming or not? And
Yeah.
for some people, it's an instant, amazing dive in. This is what I've been waiting for all my life. Let's dive into that choice. I am so ready to claim it. And for other people, it's very much that we sit there in that space.
Yes.
We sit there and we kind of look around and we feel, and we're still reflecting and we're still weaving parts of
Yeah.
ourselves. We're still calling them home, essentially. Those traumas, those pains, those times that we feel we let ourselves down, where we failed some part of ourselves in a deep way. And we sit there in that place of unknown. And we could say that's the place of the mystery as well.
It
So
is.
sit there and we accept that we're sitting there. So it
Mm.
doesn't have to be dramatic in any way. We know that at some point there's the choice to stay sitting, to think, I cannot be bothered, and I'm pretty much just going to deal with whatever might comes my way for the next 20 years. Okay, it's a choice.
Yeah.
Or we say, yeah, wow, I'm kind of excited to see what treasures
Mm.
I am.
Mm.
And then we start exploring that. So it can be dramatic or it can be incredibly peaceful. And I would say that this period of my menopause, this experience of my menopause, has been deeply peaceful. Really, I've loved walking beside my experience of menopause, being able to witness it, being able to feel compassion on those days where I kind of think, I'd really like to have sex with my husband, but actually, that's just a cognitional thing because my body doesn't want to at all. And think, oh, but normally I love physicality. I'm a delicious person. I love the senses. But no, today I'm not that person anymore. So I wonder what kind of person I am and what kind of person and what my experiences will be as I just bear witness to them and experience them in truth, in communication with myself and my husband or whatever other person I'm in relationship where things are coming up because of menopause. So I think it feels important to say that we can pace our experience of the menopause. We can find our ways to bring in the deep peace and the deep joy, even on the difficult days. And I think that's an important rewriting of that story.
That's absolutely crucial. And I think the key word here is support, that there has been support that, or resourced.
Yeah.
That, yeah, because without resourcedness, there it's much harder
Yeah.
to actually be able to be in those places. And the other thing I want to acknowledge is that this is in our work, we teach menopause is the final chapter of a journey you have been on, but most people haven't been consciously working with the menstrual cycle and pacing it and honoring the changing moods and energies of the month. So they sort of slam into menopause and it loads in front of them. But that actually was not my experience, because of course I had been working with my cycle for years. So it was this kind of, actually remember the moment where I felt ready. I remember a feeling of dignity and stepping up to something, even as I was very confronted by things, confronted by my shadow, all the inner work that comes up, and confronted by what I had and hadn't done in my life, and the reckoning I had to make with that. But I had been prepared. I had been on a journey, and that's what's so tragic, is that so many are rocking up at menopause completely untutored, in a sense, in the cyclical journey of the menstrual cycle, of menstruality. And so they haven't been prepared. Actually, the menstrual cycle journey, menstrual cycle awareness, prepares you for, it tutors you in how to meet menopause. It's still, ultimately, it's a bit like childbirth. You can do all the preparation, but I'm told, because I haven't had children, but actually experience it as another thing. But still, the preparation is important. Yeah. So, yes. And I just really want to acknowledge this for those people who are having a really tough and extreme time with their menopause right now. It's a mystery how some people have, at one level, it's not a mystery. It's about resourcefulness and preparedness and support from our culture and naming and affirmation, education and all that. That will transform things. And there is a mystery at work where for some there is an inexplicable, unbelievable shock, and that is profoundly challenging. And I often think to myself, the bigger the challenge, the bigger the power. I want to say to people, there is an enormous power that's wanting to unfold here. You've got something here, and you're being taken through. What you're going through is your awakening to that power. You can't just have that power. You've got to step into it. You've got to evolve into it. You've got to grow into it. You've got to be able to take responsibility for it. Yeah. So
very, very much agree.
Just got a couple of minutes left. I want you to have some space just to tell people about where they can find you, because I want to be able to go to you and learn all this incredible energy work.
Well, thank you for already mentioning my book. Please, if you're interested in understanding more about your energy, that's a brilliant place to start. But also my website, I've got a lot of information about energy. YouTube has so many videos for hormones, for menopause, for liver, as we talked about. So wherever you are called to start exploring and being supported in that journey of energy and hormones, not just menopause, but through the whole cycle, my website, pruneharris.com, is the easy start point to direct you wherever you need.
Yeah, you've got so many courses on there, but you've got just going to YouTube and type your name in, and then there's just a ton of stuff, your problem, whatever it is, and the stuff that comes up. It's so good. It's all just freely available on YouTube. It's amazing. And then you've got all these marvelous courses and your book, which I highly recommend to everybody.
Thank you, Alexandra.
Prune, thank you. We've just begun.
We've just begun.
Just getting going. I feel I've had a very satisfying, rich experience with you.
I feel deeply supported and enlivened as well, and hope that for everybody going through menopause, then they can experience being enlivened and supported. It will change the world.
Yes, and that everyone finds their juicy magnificence. Thank you very much, Prune.
Bye bye.